Okay, this is the last of the videos for week 3, moving into week 4. And in this case, what we're going to be doing is our density analysis in arcPRO. We're going to be looking at automobile accidents and their occurrence. We're going to be comparing January to July, and then we're going to be looking at alcohol-related versus non-alcohol-related. And so again, very straightforward process. We're going to apply a definition query to 2 fields overall, and then we're going to generate our density surfaces with a search area of 7,500 feet and a pixel resolution of 100 feet. All right, so let's get started. All right, so here we are back in our arcPRO environment, and we're in the map view. What I've done is I've put our study boundary again in, that's in black, and then we have our crashes. And what we can see is there's quite a bit of them. And so what we want to do first of all, remember we were looking at a January versus July, and so that's a definition query based on the month. And so again, if we click on our feature class, study crashes, and we right click and we look at its properties, remember in arcPRO, definition query is under properties, and we're going to add a clause. And in this case, what we're going to be looking for is the month. And we're going to say is equal to, we'll lose our drop down here for values. And since we're in January, that's going to be month 1. And we're going to hit OK. And we've now created a subset. Once we've done that, we're going to use our geoprocessing tools in order to produce what we would call a point density surface. And in the point density surface, remember that we're focusing on making sure that our analysis extent is that of our study area, that our pixel size is 100 feet, and that our neighborhood, in other words, our search radius, is going to be 7,500 feet. So that's what we're going to get to here. So again, geoprocessing typically resides here on the side. If it's not there, remember that under analysis, you can click on tools and that will open it up. So here we are, we're going to click on geoprocessing, and it's going to ask for find tool. And again, what I want is a point density. And there it is at the top, comes up. I'm going to click on that. And it'll take a minute for it to start the tool. Now I'm going to open this up a little wider so you can see what we've got here. And remember that we have parameters and environments in the arcPRO geoprocessing toolset. And so our point features, what we're interested in here, are our crashes. And remember, since we've already used the definition query, it's only those that meet the criteria of crash month is January. There is no population field in this case. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to output this to my, again, we're going to go to where we are, and I'm going to go to my desktop here because I already have, and I haven't connected it, and again, you could do that. In my week 3 data sets, I have a results folder, or a results geodatabase, excuse me, and we're going to do a pro January crash. That's what we're going to call it. We're going to save it. Now my output cell size, again in arcPRO we define that here, and I'm going to say this is going to be 100 feet. Remember, it's going to use native units in this case. And we're going to say 100 feet, it's going to be a circle, and my radius is going to be 7,500 feet. My output units are going to be crashes per square mile. And now I need to simply go to my environment, and I'm going to make sure that my extent is the same as my study boundary, and that my mask is also my study boundary. And so now we've got everything set, and I'm going to click Run. And here we are. And what we'll notice here, I'm going to close this. Remember, this is kind of a summary of what was done. I'm going to close that. And what we see here is, I'm going to just turn this off for a minute. One of the things that arcPRO does is it uses a scheme in terms of my symbolization that actually has a transparency to it. You'll notice that if I were to bring up my topographic underneath this, you're going to actually see that you can see through it. And one of the ways that you'll notice this just very quickly in our symbology, I'm going to go over here, we're going to make this our active one, and I'm going to click on my symbology. And you'll notice that this has this no data that is kind of this checkerboard. And you'll notice that my color scheme fades into it. If I want to actually see the extent over everything, I would click on this and I would change it to one that is solid throughout. So if I click on that one, you'll notice that all of the data appears there, even down to its lowest values. So again, that's the symbology of this one. And I'm going to go back to my original one here. You can see again, if I kind of work through these, you'll see that some of these have that kind of transition to a fade in it. And we'll pick that one there. And so I'm going to leave it at that. And now what we're going to do, so that's my first one. And now I'm going to compare that, and we're going to minimize that. And we're going to do it again. And in this case, we're going to say my study area crashes. I'm going to go back into my definition query, and I can go back into this one by editing. And instead of having number 1 there, I need to have number 7. That would be July. And I'm going to hit OK. And now when I turn that one on, what we would see is it's a slightly different extent. And I'm going to go back into my geoprocessing. And in this case, again, my parameters, you'll notice that it keeps the last one. Study area crashes. My output cell size is 100 square miles, 7,500. And then I'm going to go into my environments. And again, I want to make sure, so here we say that my processing extent is in fact the same. Again, I'm going to go back in and say my study boundary. And my cell size I'm going to leave alone. And then my mask is also again study boundary. Now my output though, that's the only part of this that I really have to change. You'll notice that the output was called January before. I'm going to call it now July. Just going to modify that a little bit. And we're going to click on run again. And what we can see now, if we go over here, you'll see that if I compare the two of them, and I can actually lay one over the other. I'm going to turn this one on underneath. That in fact we have a slightly different characterization here versus the other. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into this one. And so again, this is my July. And I'm going to go into its symbology. Again, if we don't have that there, we're going to click on symbology. And here it is. And again, I want to change this so that it's in the same color scheme as the one I have right now, so I can kind of do a comparison. So I'm going to scroll on down until I can find this yellow to orange. And now, again, we'll let that hide itself. And what I can do, I'm going to turn off my points. And if I click this one, I toggle this on and off, you'll see, in fact, that there's a slight change in where the crash concentrations are. And so I've made a little bit of a variation in that. And that is how we would do a visual comparison. Now, the last one that we're going to do, remember I had asked about the question of crashes alcohol related. And so again, I'm going to make sure all of these are off. And I'm going to go back in to my crashes. Again, go into my properties. And again, I'm going to clear off my expression. And I'm going to add a new clause where, again, this is the alcohol one is fairly far down towards the bottom. I'll have to find it here. Scroll on down. And here it is, alcohol related. I'm going to click on that, is equal to. Now I'm going to put this in. I'm going to say, in this case, yes. We'll start with yes. And add this clause. And click OK. And now we have, again, one way of looking at this. I'm going to go back to my geoprocessing. And you'll notice, again, it continues to populate this. The output raster now, though, is going to be alcohol. If I spelled that right. And again, everything I want to keep the same. Again, my environments, I'm going to go back in and just make sure my extent is going to be the same as my study boundary. And my mask is also going to be study boundary. So everything is okay. Now I'm going to click run. And again, we see that it's using the symbology that is this transparent one. So again, I'm going to go back in. And what I'm interested in here is the symbology for my alcohol. Again, I really don't want to deal with these transparencies right now. And so I'm going to look for the high frequency. I'm going to use a red one here. And what we see is that, again, I have fairly high concentration here, here, and here. It's slightly different than what we saw in just general crashes January and July. All right, now I'm going to stop here. I would like you to try to do this for, this was alcohol related. Go back in and try to do this for non-alcohol and then do the comparison, and we'll discuss this in class. We'll see you then.